Today we're talking about something that's about to hit home for millions of Americans in just a few days. The government shutdown that started back on October 1st isn't just about federal workers missing paychecks anymore. It's about to get very real for over 42 million people who depend on food assistance to feed their families. And here's the kicker. This whole situation could have been avoided, but politics got in the way. So let's break down what's happening, why it matters, and what it means for you. How we got here. All right. So first, how did we end up in this mess? Every year, Congress has one big job when it comes to keeping the lights on in Washington. They need to pass 12 separate spending bills before October 1st, which is when the new fiscal year begins. Think of it like paying your rent. If you don't pay by the due date, things stop working. But here's the thing. Congress almost never actually passes those bills on time anymore. Instead, they rely on what's called a continuing resolution, or CR for short. It's basically Congress saying, hey, we're not done figuring out the budget yet, so let's just keep spending at last year's levels for a little while longer. On September 19th, the House of Representatives passed one of these continuing resolutions. It would have kept the government funded through November 21st, giving them about 2 more months to work out a real budget deal. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, not so fast. Here's where things get political. In the Senate, you need 60 votes to pass most legislation. Republicans have 53 seats, which means they need at least 7 Democrats to vote yes. And Democrats said, we're not voting for this unless you also agree to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies. These subsidies help about 24 million Americans afford their health insurance through the ACA marketplace. They're set to expire at the end of this year, and without them, families could see their premiums jump by hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Republicans said no. They wanted a clean CR with no add-ons. Democrats held firm. Neither side blinked. And at midnight on October 1st, the government shut down. As of today, we're nearly a month into this shutdown, making it the second longest in American history and the longest full government shutdown ever. The SNAP crisis explained. Now, for the first few weeks, most Americans probably didn't feel the shutdown directly. Federal workers weren't getting paid, some national parks closed, but day-to-day life continued pretty normally for most people. But that's about to change in a major way. SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which most people still call food stamps, is about to run out of money. We're talking about approximately 42 million Americans who rely on this program. That's roughly 1 in every 8 people in the country. Let me explain how SNAP actually works, because it matters for understanding why we're in this crisis. Every month, states send electronic files to something called an EBT vendor. Think of it like the company that processes debit cards. These files contain information about who's eligible for benefits and how much they should get. The vendor then loads that money onto people's EBT cards, which they can use to buy groceries. The crucial part is this. The government processes benefits in the month before they're distributed. So October benefits were actually secured and processed back in September before the shutdown began. That's why October payments went through normally. The money was already committed. But November is a different story. On October 10th, the USDA sent a letter to state agencies telling them to hold off on sending those electronic files for November. Translation, don't process November benefits because we don't have the money to pay for them. And here's where it gets real. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins stated publicly that the program will run out of money in 2 weeks, warning that millions of vulnerable families won't have access to food assistance. Several states have already issued warnings to recipients. Pennsylvania's Department of Human Services posted a notice saying November 2025 SNAP benefits cannot be paid. Texas said benefits won't be issued if the shutdown continues past October 27th. Similar announcements came from Minnesota, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, Nevada, and North Dakota. We're talking about $8 billion in monthly benefits that suddenly won't be there. $8 billion that people use to buy groceries, that flows through local economies, that keeps families fed. The contingency fund controversy. Now, you might be thinking, doesn't the government have backup money for situations exactly like this? Yes. Yes, they do. SNAP has what's called a contingency reserve fund. According to policy experts, there's about $6 billion sitting in this fund right now. It was specifically created by Congress to cover situations where there's a funding gap. And here's what makes this situation so frustrating. The USDA's own shutdown plan from before October 1st clearly stated that these contingency funds are available to fund participant benefits in the event that a lapse occurs. But now, the Trump administration is saying they won't use that money. Over the weekend, the USDA posted a message on its website saying the well has run dry. At this time, there will be no benefits issued November 1st. The message went on to blame Democrats for the situation. The department claims these contingency funds are not legally available for regular monthly benefits and are only meant for natural disasters like hurricanes and floods. But here's the thing. Legal experts and budget analysts are calling this claim questionable at best. David Super, a Georgetown University professor who focuses on government administration, said the agency's position is utterly without foundation in law. Katie Berg from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities put it bluntly. SNAP still has billions of dollars in contingency reserves that could fund the bulk of what is needed for November benefits. Situations like this are precisely why Congress provides them. And get this, the original USDA shutdown plan that explained how these funds could be used, it's been removed from the agency's website. Meanwhile, food aid advocates point out that the administration has found creative ways to fund other priorities during the shutdown. They shifted $300 million in tariff revenue to keep the WIC program running. They found $7.9 billion in unspent Department of Defense funds to pay active duty military members. So the question isn't whether the money exists or whether the administration can find ways to move money around. The question is whether they choose to do it for SNAP benefits. Real-world impact. Let's talk about what this actually means for real people. First, there's the immediate human impact. Take Shari Jablanowski, a 66-year-old widow living outside Pittsburgh. She's raising her disabled nephew who gets $291 a month in SNAP benefits. She told NPR that she already had to skip paying her gas and electric bill this month to make her car payment because she needs that car to get to doctor's appointments and help her niece get to work. If her nephew's benefits disappear in November, she's worried she won't have heat. And forget about Thanksgiving. That's not a hypothetical political talking point. That's a real person making impossible choices, and she's one of 42 million. Now multiply that across the country. Seniors who rely on SNAP will have to turn to already strained food banks. Working families, because yes, many SNAP recipients have jobs, will have to figure out how to stretch budgets that were already stretched thin. Parents will have to choose between buying groceries and paying other bills. But the ripple effects go way beyond just the people receiving benefits. Think about your local grocery stores, especially in smaller towns and rural areas. SNAP benefits make up a significant portion of their total food sales. We're talking about $8 billion every month flowing through local economies. When that money suddenly disappears, it doesn't just affect the families using it. It affects the cashiers working the registers, the store owners, the delivery drivers, the suppliers. Small grocery stores could see their revenue drop overnight. And this is happening right before Thanksgiving. Stores have already been planning their seasonal orders: turkeys, produce, canned goods. They count on November sales to stay profitable for the year. If 42 million people suddenly can't afford to buy as much food, those shelves stay stocked longer, spoilage goes up, and the shock travels up the entire supply chain. According to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, SNAP helps stabilize local economies. More than 250,000 food retailers across the country count on that income every month. Kelly Kuhn from the Michigan Nonprofit Association called it a double whammy. Because food banks are already under strain, and now they're about to see a massive surge in demand that they simply can't meet. Food charity networks don't have anywhere near $8 billion in monthly capacity to fill that gap. The political standoff. So why isn't Congress doing anything about this? Well, they're trying. Sort of. But they're stuck in what's basically a political loop. The Senate has been voting repeatedly on bills to reopen the government. As of today, they've taken 13 votes trying to advance a clean, continuing resolution. Every single time, it fails because Democrats won't vote for it without the ACA subsidy extension, and Republicans won't include the subsidy extension. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives isn't even in session. Speaker Mike Johnson sent everyone home after they passed that continuing resolution back in September, and they haven't come back. Both sides are pointing fingers. Republicans say Democrats are holding the government hostage over health care subsidies. Democrats say Republicans are playing politics with people's food security. And here's the really frustrating part. Even if they somehow passed that September continuing resolution today, it would only fund the government until November 21st. That's less than a month away. So we'd basically be right back in the same situation, staring at another shutdown deadline right before Thanksgiving. The calendar is now doing what politicians won't. It's forcing a decision. November 1st is when SNAP benefits are supposed to be distributed. That's less than a week away. If nothing happens, that's when 42 million Americans will see their benefits stop. November 21st is when that temporary funding law would expire anyway. That's a 3-week window between two cliffs, one that hits working families immediately and another that puts Congress right back where we started. What happens next? So what are the possible ways out of this? Option 1. Congress passes a funding bill before November 1st. At this point, with both sides dug in and the House not even in session, this seems unlikely unless there's a dramatic last-minute breakthrough. Option 2. The USDA reverses course and decides to use those contingency funds after all. The administration could authorize using the $6 billion reserve to at least partially cover November benefits, but based on their public statements, they don't seem inclined to do this. Option 3. States try to fill the gap themselves. Some governors in states like Louisiana, Virginia, and Massachusetts have already declared emergencies or are considering using state money. But here's the problem. The USDA has warned that any state that does this won't be reimbursed later, so most states simply can't afford to do it. Option 4. Speaker Johnson brings the House back into session early to pass a new continuing resolution with a later deadline. But this creates its own complications. For one thing, doing this would mean swearing in a newly elected Democrat from Arizona, which would add another vote to the opposing side. And even if Johnson got a new bill through the House, it would likely still exclude the ACA subsidies that Democrats are demanding, meaning the Senate could block it all over again. So instead of solving the problem, we'd just be watching the same movie on repeat. Right now, some states are preparing National Guard units to help with food distribution if demand at food banks spikes. Food banks are trying to stock up where they can, though they're already operating near capacity in many areas, and 42 million Americans are waiting to see if they'll be able to buy groceries next month. What you should know. If you receive SNAP benefits, here's what you need to do right now. Check your EBT card balance and your state's benefit schedule immediately. Every state runs on its own timeline, but all of them depend on federal funding. If your payment date falls after November 1st, there's a real chance it won't come through unless the shutdown ends or the administration changes course. Plan ahead where you can. Consider buying non-perishable items now: pasta, rice, canned goods, frozen vegetables. Stock up on basics while you still have October benefits on your card. Look into local resources. Find out where your nearest food banks are located and what their hours are. Many are trying to prepare for increased demand, but it's good to know your options. And if you don't receive SNAP yourself, this still affects you. Food prices could rise as stores deal with sudden drops in sales. Local businesses could struggle. The availability of certain items could be affected. This is also a good time to support your local food banks if you're able. They're about to face unprecedented demand, and they need donations of both food and money to handle what's coming. Look, at the end of the day, this shouldn't be happening. We're the wealthiest country in the world. We have the money sitting in contingency funds specifically designed for this exact situation. We have politicians on both sides who know this is going to hurt real people, including many of their own constituents. And yet, here we are, days away from millions of Americans losing access to food assistance because Washington can't get its act together. This isn't about whether you're Republican or Democrat. This isn't about whether you think the ACA subsidies should be extended or not. This is about whether we're going to let 42 million people, including millions of children, seniors, and people with disabilities, go hungry because politicians can't compromise. The shutdown started as a political fight over budgets and healthcare subsidies. But it's about to become a crisis at kitchen tables across America. So what do you think? Should the administration use those emergency funds to keep benefits flowing? Should Congress come back immediately and work this out? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button and subscribe to Buck Breakdown for more no BS coverage of what's really happening in Washington, and share this with someone who needs to know what's coming. I'm out. Stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll see you in the next one.